Welcome to Slacker Sports Show.
Good evening, sports fans, and welcome back to another podcast episode of Slacker Sports Show, where we discuss anything and everything you need to know about sports. Let's welcome in the co-host of the podcast, Mark. How are you, Mark?
Doing well. NBA playoffs are about to wrap up. MLB playoffs are really kind of getting the heat of things, and the NFL's kind of up and down as far as play and COVID and everything, but not going to complain if we have all these sports going on at once, so I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, so we're going to cover the NBA playoffs, MLB playoffs, and the NFL. NCAA, we're not really going to touch much just because there's not a lot going on that's, I guess, very significant right now besides just teams playing. So we'll start off with the NBA playoffs, and if you didn't know, the Lakers are up 3-1 in the series so far, and they'll be playing their next game on the 9th, and that could be the last game if the Lakers win. And so 3-1 series, and when this comes out, it will be, I guess, tomorrow, hopefully, either tomorrow or the day of Game 5, where the Lakers won the first two, Heat won the third one, and then the Lakers won Game 4. What do you think about this, Mark? Are you surprised that the Lakers are up 3-1? Are you surprised that the Heat have won a game? What's your take on it?
I guess I wish it was closer, and I figured it might be like a 2-2 series after 4. I think the biggest thing, and this has kind of been a talking point since the Heat suffered some injuries in Game 1, is that you basically needed their whole team to beat the Lakers' 2 stars, to beat LeBron and Anthony Davis. And that was kind of Miami's thing coming into this series, was they have a well-rounded team. You got guys that can score from top to bottom, basically, and that would give them a fighting chance. But Goran Dragic got hurt, I think, after Game 1. He had something wrong with his foot. And then Bam Adebayo's kind of had a nagging injury this series. So I think just kind of having some of those key pieces hurt has set them back a little bit. Really, they haven't been beat down in any game besides Game 1. I mean, they've kept it relatively close. Game 2 was a loss by 10 points. Game 3 is a loss by 11 points. Or they won by 11 points, in Game 3. And then Game 4, they only lost by 6. So Miami's keeping it close, and they're still playing hard. Still trying to kind of ball hawk on the defensive end and everything. But I think you just need that complete team for Miami to have a chance against these Lakers, and right now they're not getting that. And then surprisingly, I guess the thing that really has stuck out to me the most is that the Lakers role players are really starting to step up. I mean, everybody knew about LeBron and Anthony Davis coming in, and you get a good game here and there from some of the role players on the Lakers, but I think everybody's been more consistent during the playoffs, and kind of just you're getting more support from, I'm not going to call them your backup guys, but just kind of, you're not your stars on the Lakers. And I think that's what's really stood out to me, is that you're getting, I guess, more of a team effort from the Lakers, even though their main guys are still going off, but you're getting more support from your number 3, 4, and 5.
I would say the biggest takeaway for me is the fact that Anthony Davis seems to be playing out of his mind. The first game, he had 34 points, and he had 34 points in the first game, 32 in the second game. Game 3, he kind of dropped down to 15. He didn't play well in that one. And then Game 4, he had 22. So kind of what you said. I mean, the players around them have been playing better, but I feel like Anthony Davis has kind of stepped his game up. I mean, not that he wasn't playing well before, but the first 2 games he played out of his mind with 34 and 32 points, right around LeBron James. So I don't know. I think to me the deciding factor is, I mean, they both got to play well, but if Anthony Davis can score and play just like LeBron James, and that just makes him that much harder to beat for Miami. And Miami's already coming in kind of already undermatched and undermanned. Like you said, they have to play their best. They have to play really, really good in order to beat this team. But when Davis, is consistently going off and LeBron James is consistently going off, it just makes it that much harder. And then, like you said, they've gotten some help around them. Rondo had 16 in Game 1. Kuzman had 19 in Game 2. Morris had 19 in Game 3. So yeah, their guys just around them have been playing really, really good, and just they earned game 3. I'll give them that, but the Lakers have just played lights out Game 1, Game 2, and then in Game 4 it was kind of a chess match, and the Lakers ended up winning that. So maybe we're getting closer to a more, I guess, Game 1 and Game 2, the Lakers just obliterated Miami. It seemed like they just were kind of unstoppable. Game 3, they proved they could stop them, and then Game 4, it was kind of a chess match. So I'm excited to see if Game 5 ends up in Miami's favor, and then we're on to a 3-2 series. I think Miami's slowly making this a series. I just don't know if they have enough to actually make it all the way up to win 4 games, because they're at a deficit now. There's no more losing. There's no more bad games. They have to play great every single game here on out to even stand a chance at winning a title.
Yeah, and it seems like they've had to have kind of a big performance from their stars to stay in this. Jimmy Butler had like a triple-double the other day and like 40 points, and so he had to have a big game for them to only win by 11. And so I think if they can get a big game out of Jimmy Butler, out of Bam Adebayo, who's like I said, was kind of hobbled, that could start to swing things, and it'd make for a better viewing experience if they could kind of get back in this series. Not sure if it'll happen, but I would like to see it. Even though I'm a LeBron fan, I've liked watching this Miami team. So I wouldn't mind getting a couple more games out of them, but I just don't know if they have the horses at this point. So be interesting to see how it turns out. Like you said, Game 5 is on, Friday? So we could have a champion, by the weekend, and be interesting to see how that's perceived if the Lakers win, what the national discussion is, if the Heat taking another game, and what people are saying. So be interesting to see what happens on the court, and then how people kind of view it off the court as well.
So the next playoffs, I guess, going on right now is MLB, and we've gone through the first round. We are in the second round, or the divisional round. We still got 8 teams left, started with 16, down to 8. Some I guess I wouldn't say upsets, mostly because baseball is I feel like it's very even, and especially this year, I feel like it's a very even year. There's not a lot of teams that really, really stick out. So for some of these teams, like, to move on and stuff, it wasn't really surprising. Kind of like Yankees, I thought Yankees would beat who they're playing, and they did. And so right now, in the AL, we got Tampa Bay, which is the number 1 seed, against number 5 seed Yankees, and right now they're tied 1-1 in the series. The second game in the AL is Oakland and Houston has a 2-0 lead, but right now while we're recording this, the Oakland A's actually have Game 3. They're winning right now, but we'll have to wait and see if they actually come out with that. That's in the AL. Out of the AL matchup, what's, I guess, surprising you most, or what do you feel like is surprising? Are you surprised by any of the teams that moved on, or what do you think, Mark?
The whole Astros thing, I guess, surprises me. We talked about this a little bit before the podcast started, and I don't think they had a winning record. I think you said they're like 29-31 or something like that, and just seems like it's, for them, there's always going to be a question of, well, why can you flip the switch now? Like, are you cheating again? And I haven't heard anything, but just kind of, that's the first thing that comes to mind after you're involved in this big cheating scandal. Like, are you cheating again now the playoffs come around? Kind of lay low, during the regular season, and you're doing something now, or are you just kind of getting hot? And that could be the case, but I hope the A's come back in this one. The A's have been good basically all year, and I think they're a fun team to watch, so I hope they can come back and make it a series. Tampa Bay and the Yankees, like you said, I'm not too surprised there. I think we both picked the Yankees before the season even started to make the playoffs and potentially get to the World Series. And they've been ravaged by injuries this year. Had a lot of guys hurt, but I think they're tested. They have a lot of veteran guys who can step up in this sort of spot, and they're facing a good Tampa team. But that could be a series where I wouldn't be surprised if the underdog, who's the Yankees at this point, even though they're a national brand, they're the number 5 seed. I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up moving on. But seems like it's been a tight race so far in that series, and got to watch a little bit of the game the other day, and it was a pretty good game back and forth the other day. So be interesting to see how the AL turns out.
And this division round is best of 5. The next one, I believe, is best of 7, and then the World Series is best of 7. So this one, you only need 3 games to move on. So Oakland already down 2-0. So if they lose another game, the Astros move on. Whereas Tampa Bay and the Yankees are 1-1 right now. I believe they played a night. And so they played tonight and Thursday and Friday. So we'll kind of know soon who moves on to the next round. But yeah, kind of what you said. The Yankees have kind of turned it on hot lately. Coming into the playoffs, I believe they won 8. They went 8-2 in their last 10, I think, and they just all of a sudden people just started, doing what we thought the Yankees would do all year, and they've kind of had those injuries, but it seems like they're starting to come out of it. Stanton's back in there. Clint Frazier playing out of his mind. I mean, they're starting to figure it out, and the Yankees are actually a really scary team, and it kind of stinks for Tampa Bay that they have to play in, because I feel like even though Tampa Bay is a 1 seed and the Yankees are the 5 seed, I feel like the Yankees have the upper hand, and I feel like the Rays are actually the underdog right now. But again, we'll see what happens. As for the Houston and Oakland, yeah, I don't know. The Houston thing, I'm not going to be over it, never going to be over it, and I don't know. Basically, if they move on, I mean, whoever they play, I hope beats them, and it's going to be like that. I think until they kind of clear house, whether or not they get a new owner, or if the GM's gone, or all the players have moved on by then, I don't know. I just feel like the Astros shouldn't even be there to begin with. But again, another whole other podcast. So in the NL, we got the Dodgers and San Diego. Right now, the Dodgers are up 1-0. We got Atlanta, the 2 seed versus 6 seed Miami, and Atlanta just won their second game, so they got the 2-0 lead. Again, this is best of 5. So any surprises here with who moved on to the next round, or are you surprised by how any of these teams are playing, Mark?
I guess as a casual baseball fan, and I kind of hit on this last week, I believe, but I guess I'm just surprised the Marlins are there and have moved on. I figured that'd be kind of they got hot for a little bit during this shortened regular season, but may fade off during the playoffs, and seems to have not happened yet, but like you said, they're down 2-0, so they could be done here before too long. Not surprised by the Braves. I mean, we've known for a while, and if you pay attention to baseball at all, you've kind of heard about their young core and everything, so not surprised there. They just have seemed like the last couple of years they need to get some reps and kind of get in the playoffs, get used to that atmosphere. In the Los Angeles and San Diego series, that's probably the funnest series for more of a casual baseball fan like me. You're more knowledgeable about baseball and are more kind of in the weeds there. But this is probably the series for casual baseball fans like me, just because you got all the stars on the Dodgers, Mookie Betts, Clayton Kershaw, and then you got a fun, young, up-and-coming team in the Padres that we've talked about a lot this year. So I think that could be a back-and-forth series. I think the Dodgers will probably come out anyway just because they have maybe more top to bottom, but I think the Padres could make that one interesting, and that one could go 5. That's probably the one in the NL I could see going 5. I don't think the Braves and the Marlins will last too much longer. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same bandwagon there. Atlanta's got the 2-0 lead now on the Miami Marlins. The worst part about it is Atlanta hasn't even played great. They're just the better team, and Miami is they're kind of running into the fact that they're just not that great a team. Like, they made it into the playoffs. They won the first round. That was, again, best of 3, so you only needed to win 2 games. You only needed to have 2 good games. And, yeah, the Miami Marlins are just clearly overmatched in that game. And then the Dodgers and San Diego, I think I'm with you there. I think it will go 5 games. I do think the Dodgers will end up winning it. If they need to, Kershaw's going to be on the mound game 5, no matter how many days of rest, he'll be on the mound game 5. So it'll be interesting to see. And then I actually, to not give any predictions away, but the Dodgers, I think, are just clearly the best team in the NL. And I would actually say San Diego would be the number 2 team right now, the way they're playing. They're playing really good. So if any team can beat the Dodgers out of the NL, it would be San Diego. Again, I could see it go easily going 5 games. And I think the NL's actually kind of, I would say, more exciting than the AL. Usually I feel like the AL has the upper hand just because they have so much offensive firepower. But I feel like this year in a really shortened season, I feel like the NL they got that hitter now. They're using designated hitters, so I feel like they have the same opportunities that the AL has. So I actually think the NL is gonna, whoever comes out of the NL is gonna have a better chance of winning it all than who we have left in the AL. That's just my prediction.
And I would agree. I think, like you said, the NL is more fun. They got more, I guess, young guys, or at least just like stacked teams. And AL just seems like, I mean, they're all solid, but nobody really stands out as a fun or dominating team. So I agree. I think the NL, whoever comes out of that, and like you said, it kind of stinks that the Dodgers and San Diego are facing off in this round and not in the NL Championship Series. But I think the winner of the NL will have probably the upper hand going into the World Series when we get there.
All right, let's move on to the NFL. We've heard more reports about players and teams with COVID in the NFL, and it's pretty much developing every day. So it's kind of hard to say something and then tomorrow it's something completely different, and then the next day when this podcast is out and people are listening, we've had false positives and all that stuff. So I mean, it's kind of hard to talk about it on a podcast when it changes so drastically, and games are, I mean, last time we had the podcast, the Chiefs and everything were going to happen, and then, all this stuff comes out. Cam Newton has it, and then, when they're not playing it on Sunday, are they going to even play it? And then they ended up playing on Monday night. And it's just a lot going on, and it would be hard for us to try to cover it all and understand what's going on. But a few more players have come down with COVID, and it sounds, I just got a notification before this podcast that sounds like Tennessee Titans are going to be fined by the NFL for not following proper protocols. And so, I don't know. As far as the COVID in the NFL, it's just kind of a toss-up right now. But we're just going to kind of glide through the COVID part and talk about the standings, talk about some surprises that we have. So I'll get started with the positives for the surprises. For me, it's the Bills. It has to be the number one on this list because right now they're 4-0 and top of the AFC East. I know you've really liked the Bills coming into this year, and I said last week if they won that they would be for real, and they won. So I mean, yeah, they're for real. They're on top of the AFC East. I'm still interested to see when they play a team like a Green Bay or a Chiefs or a Seattle, if they're there. But as far as, I mean, they've taken care of business, and so I got to give them props for that. Anything you want to add for the Bills?
Not really. I mean, like you said, I was kind of on their hype train coming into the season. I don't know if I expected them to be 4-0. That's surprising, but I think they have a really talented team. Their defense has some household names, but just has a good group of solid guys from top to bottom. And then getting Stephon Diggs this offseason has helped. John Brown's there. He's a solid receiver. And like you said, they do have some tough tests coming up, which may kind of indicate which way the season goes from here. We're about a quarter of the way done. But their next stretch here could be kind of hairy. This week they play Tennessee, who, like you said, we'll see if that happens and what they're doing. Then they go against Kansas City, kind of get a week off when they play the Jets in Week 7. Then they face New England, who has been pretty good this year. I think Buffalo's right now kind of the number one in the AFC East, but New England's always good. Then they play Seattle, and then their last, I'd say, third of their schedule is a little bit easier, but this next 4 or 5 weeks will really kind of show what they're made of. And by no means do I think they're going to go undefeated, but they could suffer a couple losses here in the next couple weeks and still be fine with their kind of easiest schedule of the last third of the season.
And the next team that I'm surprised about has to be the Cleveland Browns being 3-1. They started out 0-1 in the season and thought, yep, that's the Browns. And then they rattle off 3 wins, and I don't know what to think necessarily. They beat the Bengals, who obviously aren't the most fantastic team. They beat Washington, which, again, kind of like a middle-of-the-road type of team for me. And then they beat the Cowboys, which they kind of obliterated the Cowboys. The Cowboys really came back. I think they were up like 41-10 or something at some point in the game, something crazy like that. And Cleveland is just, they've put up points on offense, and I feel like that's kind of been what they've been missing, is having that that good offense. So far, they scored 6 against the Ravens, but that defense is good. They scored 35 against the Bengals, 34 against Washington, then 49 last week against the Cowboys. So it looks like their offense is finally turning around. I guess the only question now is, can their defense keep them in games? So far, they've scored 124 points on the season. They've given up 126, which is the most in the AFC North. So they're 3-1, but that could easily turn into bad. They play the Colts, which Colts are also 3-1. Then they play the Steelers that are 4-0, then against the Bengals, and so on and so forth. So they got a couple of games coming up against Colts and the Steelers that they could end up losing both of them and being back to 500. What do you think, Mark?
I'm surprised by them too. I think the biggest thing, like you said, has been their offense. And Cleveland's one of those teams that I think, like when Baker kind of got there and took off, people were getting kind of on their bandwagon. And for me, it's kind of a prove it thing where I've thought they're going to be good for a couple years now and just always get burned. So, like you said, as they get into kind of their meat of their schedule, it'll tell us more. But that offensive performance in Dallas was definitely big. You don't see, even in the NFL with all these high-powered offenses, 49's not a number that a ton of teams reach on a weekly basis. So I guess that's been the surprising thing to me, is that their offense has just been so high-powered and not really any outstanding numbers, just kind of getting contributions from everybody. So that's encouraging. And I still don't think they're the number one team there in their division. Baltimore, I think, still is going to have that crown until Cleveland goes and beats them or takes the division. But they're surprising and could be a kind of a sneaky wild card team if they keep it up.
And so the next two surprises that I have is Seattle and Green Bay, both at 4-0. And I guess the biggest surprising, I don't know, I felt like Green Bay had it in them. Seattle was good enough, I believe, to go 4-0 to start the season, but just the way they've done it, the way that they've, kind of just manhandled everyone. They beat the Falcons by 13 week 1. They beat the Patriots by 5 week 2. They beat the Cowboys week 3 by 7, and then they just beat the Dolphins 31-23, and the Dolphins pretty much just came back at the end. It wasn't even that close of a game. So they're 4-0 in their league. Their defense I'm a little worried about just because they've been giving up a lot of points. But looking at the NFC West, you got to like their chances, honestly. They're 4-0. LA Rams are 3-1, then Arizona 2-2, and San Francisco, which we both kind of had coming in the season, being the one come out of that NFC West. They're 2-2, and they've mostly just struggled with just injuries, have really killed their chances this year. So right now it's looking like Seattle's going to take over the NFC West, and their next couple of games, Vikings, who are on a losing record, Cardinals, and the 49ers. And then they got the Bills. So the next 3 weeks, it seems like they kind of got an easier schedule. I guess this next 4 weeks, they got a bye in there. But it's looking a little easier for the Seattle team. I could see the Seattle team going 7-0 before they have to play the Bills. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, like you said, I don't think either one of us are too surprised that these teams are decent. I don't think either one of us thought they were going to be bad. I'm just surprised they're both 4-0. And really, I think they've had fairly easy schedules so far, both teams. Green Bay's played Minnesota, who, like you said, is, at least for me, been kind of disappointing with a 1-3 record. They played Detroit week 2, New Orleans week 3, and Atlanta week 4. So a lot of those teams aren't as good as we thought they might be, and might have a little bit easier schedule than we pictured going in. Seattle, like you said, played Atlanta, New England, Dallas, and Miami, which Atlanta's been kind of up and down. New England's been solid, so that's a good win for them. Dallas, don't know what to think of them right now. Just kind of, a confusing team, and then Miami. I'd say Seattle probably has the better chance of, if we get to the end of the season and look back, I would not be surprised if Seattle has a decent record, just because I think, like you said, their division's down, with San Francisco getting decimated by injuries. Arizona's kind of cooled off since week 1, week 2. The Rams are really their only challenge, and that could be one of those games that's high-scoring affair. I guess I got 2 matchups with them for the rest of the year. Could be kind of high-scoring affairs, and wouldn't be surprised either way. But outside of their division, they got Buffalo they're going to play in week 9, but they play the Jets and the Giants, which there's probably 2 wins right there. They play Washington and Philadelphia, which could be another 2 wins. So Seattle, I think, has a better chance of maybe getting that shiny 14-2 record or something like that. Green Bay is a little bit tougher schedule, but still nothing monstrous. They got a bye week here this week, and then they play Tampa Bay, and then they have a couple disappointing teams in Houston and Minnesota, and then some tests here and there, but no schedule that's gonna kind of blow anybody away. And I guess Green Bay, the surprising thing to me with them is that just how Aaron Rodgers is playing. I mean, he's still a great quarterback and one of the top guys in the league, but it has kind of dropped off for the past couple of years. And I heard a quote that I hadn't really thought about it this way, but is interesting. They said when they drafted Jordan Love in the first round, that young quarterback, that they kind of drafted a chip on Aaron Rodgers' shoulder as well. Just kind of drafting a young quarterback maybe motivated him to hone in and kind of a career year this year. Seattle, we talked about it a little bit, but they're kind of finally letting Russ cook and do what he needs to do. His lowest yards total passing is 288, and the rest of the games he's had over 300 yards, so definitely solid there. So I think those teams both have a good chance of being maybe 1-2 seeds in the NFC, but just kind of surprised that they're both 4-0 at this point.
And to kind of bring up the chip on the shoulder, if you remember right, Aaron Rodgers was drafted when Brett Favre was there. And I remember people throwing a fit, being like, why would you draft a quarterback? And, all this stuff. And Brett Favre actually had some great years when Aaron Rodgers was first drafted. And then they decided to move on from him and go with Aaron Rodgers, who's another one of the best quarterbacks ever to play the game. So maybe Green Bay's onto something. Maybe they kind of know that, hey, Aaron Rodgers is in his last couple of years, so let's give him another couple of years of wondering if, because honestly, if you think about it, there's some teams that really kind of hang on to a veteran quarterback too long. And I get it, the loyalty and everything, I get it, but I mean, you have to win in the NFL, and I mean, you look at a team like the Falcons with Matt Ryan. I mean, he's been there forever, but they're not winning. So, I mean, do you move on from the quarterback? Is it the quarterback's problem? Is it just the defense? Is it offensive weapons? I mean, you got to look at other things as well. But I'm starting to wonder if Green Bay's onto something. If they draft a quarterback that they believe will be the next, in line. Give the number one quarterback kind of a, 2-year hiatus, like, hey, you got to figure it out or you're gone type of thing. But yeah, I think you're right. Aaron Rodgers has come out and he's played really, really good this year. One of the best quarterbacks right now in the league. And yeah, they're 4-0 and Green Bay is looking good. They got a bye week this week and then and kind of an easy matchup next week. I don't know. We'll wait and see how all these teams, there's a couple of teams that are 4-0 still left. We'll wait and see after this week who's still undefeated at this point. Going over to the negatives of the league, I guess the biggest one for me has to be the Houston Texans starting out 0-4, and we talked about it when we talked about their league and everything, about their coaching decisions, their GM and everything. And I'll just let you talk about it because I know you love to talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, Bill O'Brien, if you haven't heard by this point, did get fired the other day. And I heard this, and I thought it was a good point that I don't think they're really firing Bill O'Brien, the coach, because he's a solid coach and can handle an offense, but they're firing Bill O'Brien, the GM. He's had both roles, I think, basically since he's got there, or at least the past couple years. And he's just kind of wrecked what they can do going forward. I've kind of gone on rants about the DeAndre Hopkins trade, which I still don't think is good. Didn't get the value back, even though David Johnson's been solid. They don't have their first or second round picks, and I think in this next year's draft, so you can't really draft a young up and coming receiver there. And I think they have Romeo Crennel as their interim coach right now, which you might get guys motivated. I heard kind of looking at ESPN before he recorded. I saw that J.J. Watt and Bill O'Brien got into it, I guess, like last week or earlier this week before he was fired at practice. And J.J. Watt kind of was political about it and said he's always got our backs and everything, but just all the quotes coming out seem like none of the guys were really on his side at this point. So maybe they'll kind of rally around Romeo Crennel and turn things around. But I just think their cupboard's kind of bare. I guess I'll put it that way. Their number one receiver, they still got Deshaun Watson, so I guess it's not the worst situation, but their number one receiver is basically Will Fuller, who's been injured on and off. And they just don't really have much as far as draft capital going forward. So they may have to make some big trades to either clear up cap space or get draft picks for next year to be able to maybe turn this around. But I don't think it probably will get much easier just because their division has a couple solid teams. See, they play Jacksonville this next week, so that's maybe a chance to get on the right track. But then they have Tennessee and Green Bay back-to-back. And just have, like I said, a solid division, so you could be tripped up a couple times there. And I didn't expect them to be great just because they are losing DeAndre Hopkins, but disappointed that they're 0-4, definitely.
Yeah, and so I think last night I was talking about on my stream about basically they fired Bill O'Brien, and people are like, but he's got him to the playoffs 4 years in a row. That's not why he got fired, honestly. He got fired because of terrible decisions he made as a GM, and when your players don't believe in you, then kind of like what you said, like J.J. Watt had enough of him. And I think J.J. Watt even said that he lost the team. There's no point in him being coach anymore. He lost the team. And I think that's the biggest thing. And I think that's the reason they got rid of him, even though it's only 0-4 in the season. He's been there for the last 4 years. It's just, once you lose your team, you're not getting him back. So either you get rid of the coach or, that's basically all you can do. You can't get rid of the whole team. And so, once the players lose respect for their coach, there's no coming back from that. There's no point in playing for a coach that doesn't have their best interests in mind or anything like that. So yeah, honestly, I feel like once the DeAndre Hopkins thing went through, I feel like he pretty much lost the team at that point because, basically you're telling your quarterback that you're building your team around, hey, by the way, I just got rid of your best player to throw to. You're kind of screwed, but you'll figure it out. Good luck. And that's kind of what he did with the team. And yeah, and players weren't happy about it. So I think ever since that trade, he really did lose the team. And it kind of just proves it. And what I don't understand, I talked about on my stream the other night, is it is his fault as a GM, but do they not talk to the owners? Do they not talk to the owners before they make a blockbuster trade like this? Like, hey, really thinking that this might be a good idea. Like, how could the owner sit there and be like, yeah, you could do that? Like, this is such an awful trade. I don't know how it ever even went through. I don't know how the owner, whatever, I don't know how they ever signed off on letting him trade away their best player for a player that's came off an ACL tear and is maybe a top 10 back. I just don't understand how it happened. I don't know if the ownership has no pull or something. I just don't understand how it happened, but he's out, and I think it's for the best for the Texans. I just hope they can kind of salvage a year because, it's not looking good for them. Since they started out, honestly, since they got rid of DeAndre Hopkins, it just hasn't looked good for them. The next negative, I guess, so to speak, is the whole NFC East. They're really bad. To say the least. They got 1-3 teams or 0-4 teams all the way down their standings. So it's looking pretty bleak for anybody in that. And a team has to come out of here, right? There has to be a winner that makes the playoffs. Is that correct? I think so.
Yeah, even with like a 7-9 record, you still gotta make the playoffs. So
yeah, so it's not looking good. I really, there's not a lot to say good about it. I think the biggest takeaway from this is the fact that Dallas is 1-3 right now. Like, out of all the teams, I mean, New York we knew were going to be bad, and they just got even worse with the injury to Saquon. We didn't know about Washington. They're either going to be bad or good. We thought Philadelphia would be more on the positive side of 500, but the Cowboys being 1-3 is just ouch. I mean, they lost against the Rams week 1, 20-17. They had that huge comeback against the Falcons and ended up winning week 2, 40-39. Which now looking back at it, it's like, yikes, their defense is not good. And then the week 3, they lost to Seattle 38-31, and last week to the Browns 49-38, which they were again down by like 30-some points they had to come back from. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know. The numbers for the offense are there, but their defense is just giving up so many points. They've given up 146 points already through 4 weeks, which is a lot. That is way too many points for any offense to come back from. Even like Kansas City would struggle to come back from that. As far as their offense goes, they're number 1 in passing yards. They're number 3 in points for, and but they're obviously number 32 when it comes to points against, with 36 points given up a game. Is there any good things coming out of the NFC East right now, Mark?
not right now, really. I think we, like you said, both thought Dallas would be really good, or at least division champ worthy. And I still think with their offense, they have a chance to turn it around. But like you said, that defense has to turn the corner and figure something out. And if your team, if a division leader is 1-2-1, that's not looking great. I mean, the Eagles have that record right now at 1-2-1, and the team they tied with, the Bengals, has the same record, 1-2-1, is at the bottom of their division, if that tells you anything. So, like you said, I don't think either one of us thought the NFC East would be great top to bottom. We had high expectations for the Cowboys, and then the Eagles we thought would be okay. So it still has plenty of time that it could turn out that way, that Dallas could turn the corner, but that defense is just, like you said, basically awful at this point. So if they can either make a trade or just kind of have a change in attitude, that might get Dallas back in the driver's seat, but just kind of disappointing top to bottom there.
The next, I guess, I wouldn't say disappointing team, but the next team that is playing not as good as we thought they would be, and it's got to be the Vikings at 1-3. We thought out of the NFC North right now, Green Bay's 4-0, Chicago's 3-1, which is surprising, but they're 3-1 because they're barely winning games. It's not because they're going out and beating teams. They're just kind of like, I don't know, getting lucky wins, so to speak. Detroit's 1-3, which kind of expected something like that from Detroit. But honestly, had Green Bay and Minnesota kind of fighting over the NFC North. But so far, Minnesota has just not been good. They're supposed to have a great defense, and they've given up 125 points, which is not good. Their offense looks terrible. They're 28th overall in passing yards per game. They're 5th overall in rushing. I mean, Dalvin Cook's done kind of his thing this year, but he's really been the only bright spot for that Minnesota team. Week 1, losing to the Packers 43-34, losing to the Colts week 2, 28-11, Titans 31-30, so they almost pulled off one in week 3, and then week 4 they just beat the Texans, which we just talked about them, and it's not looking good for them. So not even sure that Minnesota win is anything to be happy about right now. I don't know, Mark. What do you think about this?
Minnesota's the team for me. It's probably like I'm going to go down with the ship. I still think they're really good, and the only thing that is discouraging is that they have a a decently tough schedule going forward. Like you said, we're both kind of surprised by Green Bay. So Green Bay's a solid team in their division. Chicago, like you said, I don't know if they're going to end up being the same place in the standings as they are right now, but they're playing solid on defense. They play Dallas in Week 11, so they have a decently tough schedule. But I think they have the talent to be probably a wild card team. I don't know if they can catch Green Bay in the standings for the division championship, but I still think they have the talent and could be one of those teams that they might get to the halfway point in the season and finally turn the corner and be a wild card team. But definitely disappointing. And I guess you said there's not a lot of bright spots. I guess if there is one for me, for the Vikings, it's Justin Jefferson, their rookie wide receiver that they drafted this year from LSU. And I think we had talked about him in our division preview podcast a little bit, just replacing Stephon Diggs. And he did have a big week 3 against Tennessee, had 175 yards, and picked him up on fantasy. So that's kind of a bonus for me. I don't know if I had him that week, but could be somebody to watch going forward in fantasy. But I hope the Vikings can turn around just because I'm kind of a fan of the direction of their franchise, but may not be able to do it with their schedule this year.
Yeah, because looking at their schedule for the upcoming games, they're going to be at Seattle, and then they're going to probably win the game against the Falcons. But again, the Falcons are a team that probably shouldn't be what their record is, and then they're at Packers. So they could possibly start the season 1-6 before they start kind of getting easier, and then they go at Bears, and then they go versus the Cowboys, and then versus the Panthers, who've been playing well. So yeah, their schedule is not looking good for them right now, especially since I would assume they would have beat the Colts, and they kind of just didn't show up. Titans are good. They almost beat them. And then the Packers have been playing out of their minds. So, yeah, it's not looking good right now that they're 1-3 through the first 4, and they've kind of got the schedule they got coming up. Another team, I guess our final team we're going to talk about that's kind of not as good as we thought they would be, and that's got to be the Falcons, 0-4 in the NFC South. Coming into it, we knew that the NFC South was going to be hard with Tampa Bay getting better, with New Orleans in there. But Carolina's played well. They're at 2-2 right now, and Atlanta at 0-4, at last in their division. Week 1 losing against Seahawks, 38-25. Cowboys, they ended up losing that one, which, it's a big yikes. They lost 40-39. Then they lost to the Bears, 30-26, and now the Packers, 30-16. And I guess the biggest thing is that week 2 they lost 20-some points in the fourth quarter, and then week 3 against the Bears, they're up by 20-some in the fourth quarter and lost that one as well. Not a lot of great things going on in Atlanta. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I would agree with you on that point. I guess the most disappointing thing is that they can't finish. They're definitely talented. Matt Ryan still got playing the tank. You got Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones. Todd Gurley's been okay. But I guess I would rather be, as an NFL team, bad and know I'm bad and get blown out than be in games and just can't finish. That's kind of been the biggest thing for me. Because like you said, against the Seahawks, they gave up 24 points in the second half, which they were only down by 2 at halftime in that game. So that was still, at halftime, a manageable game for them. Against the Falcons, gave up 30 in the second half, so they were winning 29-10 going into halftime, so should be able to finish that out. Just, I guess the big thing is that could be a next coach fired sort of destination. Dan Quinn, just, I don't know if it's coming from him or somebody else, but you kind of have to set the tone as a head coach of, we need to finish games and do what you can to win these games that you should be winning. So I could see him being kind of the next coach that may be let go here before too long.
Yeah, and I just read something about, while I was on ESPN, it says the Falcons owner, Arthur Blank, retained Quinn with playoff expectations and made clear that mediocrity would not be tolerated. So, yeah, he might be gone after this season. And their biggest problem is their defense. We talked about it earlier with just terrible defenses, and This is the second worst defense for points given up. They're giving up about 20 or 35 points a game. And even though their offense is great, I mean, it's so hard to try to win games when your defense is giving up 35 points a game. I mean, Matt Ryan's not playing awful. He's not playing like his best years, but he's not playing awful right now. Todd Gurley's doing the part at running back. Calvin Ridley's actually kind of stepped up this year. I feel like he's been playing very, very well. Of lately, they did have the injury with Julio Jones, so he missed a game. But I mean, they got the weapons, they got the offense. They have no defense to help them stay in games, and it's kind of when they're losing it is they go up by big points, and then their defense gives it all away. And so I don't know if it's necessarily the offense's problem. I don't know if Dan Quinn is starting to take his foot off the gas, and I feel like we've seen that a lot with teams this year, is that they get this big lead, and even last week, Cleveland and Dallas. I mean, Cleveland went up by like 30-some points, and what do? They start just kind of, running up the middle, kind of waste time. It's like, why would you do that? Why would you? We're playing NFL teams here. We're playing teams that can put up 40 points in a half. We're playing teams that can put up 31 points in a quarter. Why are you trying to run the game out? Why not stick to the game plan that you set in here with? And as sad as it seems, keep running the score up. If you keep scoring, why are you taking your foot off the pedal? And we've seen actually several NFL games actually. They come back and win, and that's what's been happening to the Falcons. I don't know how they could score so many points in the first half and then do nothing in the second half. And I mean, again, it comes back to like Dan Quinn. Like, what are you calling? Why are you running up the middle with Todd Gurley in the second half when the first half he had 2 touchdowns and almost 100 yards? Like, that can't happen. You got to finish games out. If it involves running up the score, then so be it. You're a national football team. Like, play the whole game. Don't play one half and then second half you're just going to try to be nice and run out the score. Like, no, NFL teams don't care. NFL teams will put up as many points. Well, they should, I guess. I mean, obviously they're not, but they should put up as many points as they possibly can. And you kind of see it just all around football. Even the Chiefs, I feel like they get a lead and then they just start kind of just running up the middle. And I don't know if they don't want to show all their plays, or if they're worried that they'll show off kind of their game strategy to the next week's team or something. I don't know why they do it. I mean, it'd be interesting to talk to a head coach and ask them why they kind of go away from their game plan. But I mean, again, Falcons they got the offense, they just don't have the defense. And in the NFL, if you have a bad defense, you're not going to win many games. The next one to talk about is San Francisco being at the bottom of the NFC West, and again, it's surprising, but it's mostly just because of the injuries. They're 2-2, so they're not like 0-4 right now. They're at 500. They could still win the NFC West. It's not looking like it's going to happen, especially because of some of the big injuries. But yeah, I mean, it's surprising they're 2-2 at this point. But knowing why they're 2-2, I guess it's not that bad of a thing. Just too many injuries for San Francisco.
Thing that stinks is that they could kind of get back to full health, but they do have a really tough schedule this year. I mean, you got just the teams in their division they have to go up against. Los Angeles twice still, Seattle twice still, and then Arizona again, who could be kind of a frisky team. They also play New England, they play Green Bay, New Orleans, they play Buffalo, so they just have a really tough schedule, and to get kind of a slow start here definitely doesn't help. George Kittle, if you want a bright spot, George Kittle had a big game coming back this last week. It just seems like their whole team's questionable about every week, so you don't really even know who you're going to get week to week with them. So definitely, I wouldn't say it's a disappointment because it's not really their fault. It's not like they're playing bad. It's just their team's kind of ravaged by injuries. So team that we definitely thought could win the division, like you said, could if they get on a roll here, but has a very tough schedule and have to be a big kind of return to what they could be if they're going to win this division.
And I think it's going to be tough to try to beat Seattle right now. I mean, Seattle's just playing way too good. But yeah, San Francisco, I mean, as far as they're still staying in games, and they're middle of the road right now as far as statistics go. But yeah, well, I think once they get back from their injuries and stuff, I think they'll start kind of taking off. But yeah, Seattle's just looking way too good right now. So some Week 5 games that are going to be interesting to watch: Tampa Bay and Chicago. Mostly just because Chicago's 3-1 right now. Tampa Bay 3-1. This is a Thursday night game. I got Tampa Bay coming away with that one, but it will be interesting to see because Chicago's 3-1, and Tampa Bay's 3-1. We've seen Tom Brady like last week lead them back, kind of like he did with New England. So I think Tampa Bay is kind of figuring stuff out. They were down big last week, but were able to come back and win that one. So 3-1 teams, Tampa Bay and Chicago tomorrow night. Buffalo and Tennessee, if it's played, it's kind of with Tennessee having their whole team having COVID and stuff. If they play it, it will be interesting because Buffalo 4-0, Tennessee 3-0. So a couple of unbeaten teams there. Indianapolis at 3-1, at Cleveland 3-1. I think that'll be an interesting one as well. I think that'll kind of determine if Cleveland's the real deal, if they can finish off the Colts. And then the Las Vegas Raiders 2-2 at Kansas City 4-0. Another just interesting game. See how the Chiefs play. See if the Raiders are kind of the real deal. The Raiders kind of seem to go up and down. When they play well, they're really good, and then when they don't play well, they can pretty much get beat by anybody. So that's kind of the Week 5 games to watch. What do you think about those, Mark? Does any game stick out? Are you going to watch any of them?
I'd say the one that sticks out for me is probably, like you said, Indianapolis and Cleveland, just to see if both those teams are for real. Both 3-1 right now, and Cleveland with the offense seems to be rolling. And we'll see if they can keep that up against a pretty solid defense at Indianapolis. As a Kansas City fan, the Las Vegas Raiders game is a big one, and I think even if you're not a fan, that one's going to be interesting to watch just to see, like you said, if the Raiders are for real, if they could be a wild card team, or if they'll start to kind of trail off. They've been impressive to me this year. I didn't know if they'd have a ton, so I've been kind of impressed so far at them, and I think it could be maybe a tougher matchup for Kansas City than it looks like on paper with them. Tampa Bay, like you said, I think they're starting to kind of round into what everybody thought they were going to be. I kind of had some doubts, so I'm getting proven wrong there, and not the hugest Tom Brady fan, so I was kind of hoping they were going to be a disappointment this year, but seems like they're going to kind of turn around and be that, not going to say a super team, but just a really talented group top to bottom there. And then, like you said, Tennessee and Buffalo, who knows if that's going to get played. Tennessee so far has been the team that everything's kind of been pushed back or altered for the most so far. So we'll see if that one's even played. But if it is, could be a solid matchup. But I kind of have my doubts if it's going to be carried out.
And so the last thing we're going to talk about, and we're going to try to talk about every single week before the end of the podcast, and that's going to be our fantasy football. We are into Week 4. I lost mine this week. The team played decent. A few guys got injured. I had Nick Chubb go on the IR, actually, and he was in my starting lineup. He got 6 carries for 43 yards, having a career day, and then he gets injured. And that's kind of really that, and Michael Gallup getting me 4.9 points. He didn't play very well. Only had 2 receptions for 29 yards. Other than that, Russell Wilson had another great day for him. Jarvis Landry had a completion for 37 yards and a touchdown. He's a wide receiver, throwing the touchdown to Odell Beckham, so that was kind of fun to see, but just wasn't enough points. My tight end, Mark Andrews, played very, very well. 3 receptions, 57 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Chris Carson sitting on the bench with 25 points, so that kind of hurts. Same thing with Todd Gurley, but you can only play so many running backs. You can only play so many wide receivers, and to have them on the bench when an injury happens. So I could have gotten 25 points instead of 4, but, it is what it is, and that's fantasy football. If I would have played Carson over Chubb, I would have won this week. However, that's not how it works, and so I'm 2-2 on the season. I think am I in third still? Yeah, I'm in third actually at 2-2 record. So, it is what it is. We're on to next week, and next week I end up playing the number 1 overall team that's still unbeaten right now, 4-0, projected to win. But again, we'll have to wait and see because you never know how fantasy football is gonna happen. How did your team do last week, Mark?
Did pretty well. Won by almost 50, which is kind of me going over projections and the other team I was facing going under. Because going in, Yahoo, the service we use, only had me winning by 2 points. So definitely kind of overperforming by me and underperforming by the team I went against. Biggest thing I guess I picked up on going into this week is just how frustrating having a player who's questionable on a Monday night game is. Just because I had Calvin Ridley set to go for Atlanta on their Monday night game and kind of debated back and forth if I wanted to keep him in or have the guys that are playing on Sunday go in and play. And I ended up making the right decision and put in Justin Jefferson from the Vikings and putting Ridley on the bench, which Ridley got 0 points. So made the right call there. Josh Allen still being great for my team. I mean, I could have put Aaron Rodgers in and got 5 more points, but that's kind of here nor there. I guess the biggest misfire for me this week was Jonathan Taylor only had 8 points. I could have put in Jared McKinnon and got 14 more points there. But had a pretty good week. George Kittle had 40 points for me in our league, so that was definitely huge. Aaron Jones had a solid game, 22 points there. Adam Thielen had a good game, 26 points. So that was his best game of the season, according to Yahoo. So definitely solid. I'm number 2 right now in our league at 3-1. Like you said, we have one team that's 4-0, and I think I lost against him already, so I might not have to face him again for a while. But going pretty well. Just need to make sure I keep making moves. And the thing that was kind of sad today was that I got like 4 notifications that players are questionable on my team. Adam Thielen is listed as questionable now. Calvin Ridley's still questionable. Darren Waller has been off and on with injuries, and then Marquise Brown on the Ravens, which I haven't played too much this year, but kind of waiting for him to have his breakout. He's questionable as well. So seems like a lot of injuries this year. A lot of guys kind of back and forth on and off the injury list. So definitely something to watch if you're playing fantasy football. If you're new in fantasy football, that's probably the biggest thing. Just watching injury reports and picking up players who are ready to go. This week, I go against a team who is tied with you for third in the league. And just kind of looking at his lineup. Julio Jones could be a big producer for him. Zeke Elliott could be a big producer for him. Depending on how the Chiefs and Raiders games go, Clyde Edwards-Helaire could be a big producer for him. So I'm projected to win at this point, but like you said, kind of have to wait and see. And football's a game where things can change quick if a guy's out here. So definitely have to kind of stay on my toes the rest of this week. So we thank everybody for listening to another podcast episode. I'll try to do better about getting our podcast up on social media so you guys know when things come out. But we appreciate you guys listening. And if you haven't subscribed yet, that's one way to kind of keep up. Even if I don't post things, just subscribe either on Apple or Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. We also have a YouTube channel where we play the audio from our podcasts every week. So if you're somebody who has YouTube up throughout the day, it might be a way to kind of listen to us there. You can find that by searching Slacker Sports Show. And then on Twitter, to get updates on us and when podcasts come out, search @Slacker Sports.